Ta-da! Good morning, everyone. As you've missed the introduction, just a quick update. I'm Ray Swarts. I am the current president of what some people call CISHRP and what is the CISHRP, the Cayman Islands Society of HR Professionals. Louise has asked me to give you a brief update on my background and career and how I am where I am. And I'll try and be brief, although you can tell from the gray and shiny hair that I'm a little on the happily older side. I am a half centurion. Yes, I made it. I plan to make it to the full century mark. And I've been working since I was 12. So I have a long and varied road. But in all honesty, the thing for me is what brought me into HR. And I would say that started long ago when I was definitively not in HR. I worked in IT, but I always found myself in the orbit of my HR colleagues within the company. It's a very large company. It's Samsung. And I was spending a lot of time with HR. It resonated with me, and I didn't recognize it at the time. But I was also the go-to guy in our IT department for any questions about HR. So managers, the director, everyone would come to me first before they would go and talk to the HR reps, because I usually knew the answer. And if not, they knew that I knew everybody in HR. So they would be, can you help me out with this? That's really my road to HR, where it started. It didn't become a real clarity for me that it was my true home until I moved to Cayman. And when I was with Deloitte, after coming here, it crystallized. They introduced me to StrengthsFinder, which if you've seen my bio, I'm a Gallup certified global strengths coach. And that was like an epiphany, and it opened my eyes. And I started doing human capital consulting with them, and I immediately said, this is my zone. I'm going to go get certified in HR. And the partner that was on top of my chain said, no, that's not what we want. We want you to work on the risk side. And I said, I apologize. I'm letting you know I am going to get certified in HR on my own time and my own dime. This is a passion for me. I found an area that speaks to me, and I'm going to pursue it. And I did, and haven't looked back. I found that my true areas of passion are around leadership, communication, and engagement, and they all dovetail tightly together. And I truly Deloitte gave me my own personal mission statement, right? Most organizations have mission statements that nobody can grab onto, nobody can really get into. Deloitte was the first company I had seen who really gave me one that just went, that's a great mission. And it was to make an impact that matters. So being that I'm known for saying, never reinvent the wheel, re-engineer it, I stole that wholeheartedly. And I freely say it. It's their mission statement. I stole it for my personal mission.
Excellent. And I love the fact that you had your moment. And I think that HR tends to be one of those careers where you realize, I know certainly I'm very similar, but for those on the session today who perhaps haven't been working or haven't been able to have that moment yet, how would you describe what human resources is? Like briefly, what is it?
It's a crazy huge domain of awesomeness and insanity. If I were going to try and encapsulate that, people often, and honestly, I find here that especially in government, there is an old school tension to think of HR as administrative staff, that you're just there as an administrator. And that is not HR. HR is everything in the domain that deals with the people in your organization. And the vernacular is cradle to grave, but that's kind of morbid. So I'll say from beginning of their time with you through to the end of their time with you. So from recruitment to exit interview, everything dealing with it is a holistic view. And I don't know whose speaker I'm getting, but I've got reverb coming through on somebody. But there is a very holistic, it covers recruitment, it covers onboarding, which very few organizations do well, and can cause major issues with leaving. It covers all understanding the laws. And in some organizations here, that could be 3 different sets of laws, some of which conflict with each other, and determining which takes precedence. It's having the passion for people and doing things the right way, while at the same time balancing that with a need to accomplish the goals of the organization. It's an exciting, I mean, there's so much. And I would say that it's a natural place for people who are extroverted or ambiverts to matriculate. However, now that we've become more savvy, I can even say there are places in HR for the intense data-driven introvert, because data analytics is huge in HR. And we've only started to scratch the surface of how to properly use that information to spot trends, to really see motions. And I think if we were more advanced at that, we probably would have seen things like the Great Resignation on the horizon. It wouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. We would have started to catch. And I don't mean to go on too long, but I will say one more thing to this, because it's very exciting for me to see the evolution of HR to the C-suite and to the decision-making table, where HR helps to set the path, not just support the organization, but actually helps to drive the strategy and direction of the organization. That's happening more and more in organizations now. Even, and I'll go back to Deloitte because I had spent time there, and I'll say, Deloitte is, generally speaking, a profit-driven company. It is a for-profit company. So the people who tend to go up are the ones who tend to bring money into the organization. That is with most consulting organizations. But I know for a fact that they made a partner of an HR person. And that says amazing things for how they recognize that talent management is critical to success.
I agree. And I think, HR has changed rapidly, especially over the last couple of years. And you're exactly right. There is a seat at the table. It is strategic. It is about business now. And I think that sort of, you do get a lot of people say, I want to be in HR because I like to be nice to people. And it is about humans. You do have to.
Absolutely.
You do have to want to be around them, but it is a business position as much as the CFO and as much as all of those things. So I think that nowadays sort of a career in HR means something a little bit different to what it used to.
It definitely does. And finding the career path in HR that excites you, that speaks to you, and really drives your passion is critical. I think that's critical for any type of role, not just HR, but it applies to HR. And too often what we end up thinking is, just like the thought that HR is just admin, everybody also thinks, well, HR is just generalist HR. And in all honesty, HR is such a broad spectrum today that you will have specialists there. And I'll go back to HR analytics. At Maples, when I was there, we had a great guy who did HR analytics. But if you asked him about law, he would have looked at you with the crickets and like, I don't know why you're asking me that question. But his HR analytics skills was amazing. He was very, very focused. And it more and more does take that level of focus to really conquer the needed domains. There's over 29 aspects to running a successful HR organization, which in all honesty is why I believe recruitment firms such as Nova, CML, that do such great work have a niche. Because if you're having to deal with all the other HR aspects, having somebody else deal with recruiting and onboarding and bringing people in, that is a godsend to office of one HRs or smaller HR teams. And the same where any type of consulting business, there's a lot of HR consulting that do fractional HR because smaller teams, if the organization's not big, how do you really provide the level of HR expertise necessary? So it's an exciting domain. As you can tell, I get excited about it.
I can, but I agree. There's so many different aspects to it nowadays, and I think for people on this call looking at it for a career, whilst that path might look more generalist in the beginning, I know that's how mine started, and I did realize that I didn't really particularly enjoy the policy side of things, but I very much enjoyed the people side of things, which is why I find myself in sort of more the recruitment training and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But it is important for you to have that generalist outlook as you begin.
And I did a talk for, I believe it was used, not ICCI, but the University College. And when I was talking to their master's class on HR, I got to a person who specialized in recruitment, and I was like, that's fantastic, definitely not for me. And she was like, is that what's wrong with recruitment? And I was like, absolutely nothing. It's just not an area I want to work in. I'm like, if you do recruiting right, you eliminate so many other issues if you get the right candidate. But it's an art. There's skill to it, but there's definitely art there. And it's not a domain that I focus in. And I know that. Sorry.
No, and so in terms of sort of starting off, if this is what you're thinking about doing, what would your advice be in terms of the education that you might need? Do you think that you need to have a professional qualification, or is work experience enough? What would your advice be?
So this is the Cayman Islands. If I were giving this talk for the US or possibly Canada, I would give you a different answer. Being that this is the Cayman Islands, I would say that you definitely need to have a degree, whether or not that, depending on what level you want to get in, you can always get your foot in the door at organizations with an associate's, especially if it's an associate's in HR. If you have an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's in business administration, HR by preference, but not necessary, especially if you have a certification. And if you want to move up, you're going to need to get your master's. And I've had this class when I was teaching the SHRM certification as which is better, a master's or certification? And it's a different answer here than it would be in the US. In the US, I would say absolutely certification, 100%. Here, it becomes a question of what your goals are. And I don't think organizations here have quite gotten to the point of accepting that certification by a professional body, such as SHRM or HRCI, is actually more important. This is, if you look at this, again, I come from an IT world that has already made the transition in most places to say, if you have a degree, that's nice. But if you have this certification, and this certification, I know that you actually know what you need to do the job effectively. Every degree for an HR comes from a variety of different universities. Some are probably have better than others. So you don't absolutely know what you're getting. But if somebody walks in and says, I've got a SHRM-CP, I have a SHRM-SCP, you know they have gone through and that they have been tested to a standard. And I'll tell you freely, that is the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. I came out with my eyes wanting to bleed, and I think I was only about 5 minutes before the cutoff time when I finished. It was a difficult test, but it really did, and I felt so strongly for it because it truly tested your knowledge. You had to actually know what you needed to be a professional. So I see that certification will become more important over time, but right now, if you have to decide where to spend your time and your dime in the Caymans, you're probably going to be better off getting a degree, because the work permitting system puts a requirement in there that they put things, and those tend to be what I see as it must have a master's in HR or business administration or an MBA. That's the gating, that you won't even get to the table if you don't have it. Whereas if you're looking to go to the US, the UK, or Canada, I would say definitely get certified.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I think as a recruiter in Cayman, I think for those here, especially Caymanians, my experience, sort of recruiting in that area is that a degree, a bachelor's degree, it doesn't have to be in HR, but something of business related would be an absolute must as your experience. I would say personally, I see many people doing the SHRM and the piece, the HRCI doing as well and getting the roles as somebody with a master's. But I agree, once you start to get to sort of the 15 years experience plus, you do seem to see that master's creeping in more and more. But I think I am starting to see that evolve. I'm not seeing it asked for as much as a requirement, but it's most certainly desirable. But I think even just looking at those professional qualifications and starting to pursue them whilst you get experience would be my biggest piece of advice.
And to be honest, one of the most capable HR managers, I'll call her what she was, an HR business partner, because that I believe that was her title, but she ran the whole HR organization in this company, and she didn't have an HR degree. I don't know that she even had a degree. She came up through the ranks, and she was flat amazing. I asked her, I was like, so did you get your SHRM certification? And she's like, oh, I haven't gotten certified yet. She had not done any certification. She just had a super passion and drive. And because of her longstanding time with the company, she was there and she was running things and doing an amazing job. So it's not necessary except for the artificial barriers, because we haven't, generally speaking, we haven't evolved to the point where we can recognize that somebody can come in. I don't have an HR degree. I have a business administration degree. But I have certification, right? Intense passion. Yeah.
Okay. And I know a few people, I know certainly people that work with me have started to do the APHR first, which is where if you haven't got a degree, it's sort of that opening certification. Is that something that you would recommend signing up for before perhaps going into the sort of SHRM or the PHR?
So I'll say this two ways. It's not a bad plan. Mm-hmm. If you don't yet know what you want to do, that's not a bad plan, because it's checking the water. I'll say the same thing I say to my clients for coaching, and that I talk to when I talk to students in university or school, and that is, you need to do some soul searching and some looking to determine what the right path is for you before you drop a bunch of money on and time on certifications or school or otherwise. And a good example of how to get that going, one, is work with a coach. Let me be clear. I'm a huge advocate of using coaches. I think we don't pay attention to the fact that we could all use some coaching and direction and a third party to really give us guidance. But again, that's a cost option. Let me give you a no cost option if you really want to get the start going. There is Marcus Buckingham. If you go to YouTube and you Google Marcus Buckingham, loved it, loathed it, you will have a video and he will talk to you about how to do a quick evaluation of the types of activities that you absolutely love and get energy from, and the types which drain the ever-living life out of you.
Mhm.
Focus on the areas where you get your energy. And if that's going into HR, fantastic. There's lots of things about that. Talk to HR professionals and find out if the types of things you love doing exist in the realm of HR, and then focus on going there. You know, we were talking about it earlier, but I know a lot of amazing HR people who are certified accountants, because on this island, accounting is one of the big ones, right? We've even had a lawyer who was HR, and they get into those fields, and then later they realize, I love HR. I'm going to go that way. And I would say that's a really good place to start. It's an exercise which can be very eye-opening if you give it the time, and it'll help you start to realize maybe these are the sort of things I need to focus on. But if you want to go let me test out the waters and I want to get it, I would say if you're not sure, go with the APHR. It will give you the touch. It'll give you the insight. I'm a big proponent of the society. So let me do shameless plug. If you're wavering on whether or not to be HR, we have our HR conference coming up and on May 20th. So go and see what HR is like at the conference. What do we talk about? What domains are we in? More importantly, go talk to your HR department where you're at. Mm-hmm. Go have lunch with your HR colleagues. Find somebody in HR and go and really have a talk to them. Find out what they love about their job. Find out what really drives them down, what there is. See if it excites you, entices you, really makes you want to go. But
something that Connect can also help with, Ray, especially for those who might not already be working. We have a network of mentors that will not necessarily spend, every week with you for the next 2 years, like as a coach, but can spend a lunchtime with you and tell you what their experience was, and give you the story, warts and all, what the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's a really great piece of advice, and something that as a recruiter we see all the time. If you can spend a lot of years studying for something only to break into it and find out that it saps all energy out of you every single day.
Exactly.
You can be very good at something, very
amazing at something, and it drains you. Do not spend your life doing it. So I absolutely agree. And you touch base on something else that I tell people very, very often, which is find a mentor. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be a mentor in your organization. It just has to be someone who you respect, that you think that they've achieved in the zones that you want to achieve, and approach them. But be aware, you're asking a lot of them. So be willing to put in the time and the effort if they come back to you with exercises and work that you need to do. Be serious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had a question pop up, which I didn't want to ask before because it could have taken us the wrong way. We've actually got two. It was down on my screen. Sorry. The first one was, what is Gallup? Because you mentioned.
Sure. I did mention Gallup. Yes. So Gallup is a very large organization, most commonly thought of as the pollsters, because they do a lot of data analytics and data around politics. They also happen to have an entire group who is focused on leadership and management. And part of what grew out of that was the Strengths Finder. Marcus Buckingham, who I mentioned previously, was actually at Gallup when they developed the Strengths Finder between Don Clifton and Marcus Buckingham. He has since left and started his own organization, doing similar things, and all great stuff. But Gallup, the organization overall is around huge amounts of big data analytics. So they can tell you what the trends are in employment, engagement, leadership, what affects people the most, what makes people stay in jobs and otherwise. So when I was mentioning data analytics for HR, they've been doing it for quite a while, and they do it very, very well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. We have another question here. I'm working on my associates in business administration. Will that help for an entry-level position, or do I have to have completed my associates before applying?
It depends on the organization, one.
Yeah.
And it really does depend. I mean, if you're interested in joining an organization while you're achieving your associates, and you definitely have a passion for that, go and talk to them. Go find the recruiter, find somebody in the organization and talk to them and make sure they know what your interest is, what your passion is, what you're willing to do, and see if there's the opportunity. I think every organization appreciates when somebody takes the time, and there's the key. Do you really want to work at that organization? You have to show that, right? Do you know about the organization? Have you studied it? Do you realize what it does that really pulls you toward it? Or is it just a job? If it's just a job, you're unlikely to make it through the door. If you really want it, being under the bar of minimum qualifications is not as big a deal when you can show them that you have the passion to be there and do the work, and because skills can be learned, right? We train people with skills. The fit and the passion of the person is critical to long-term success in an organization. And it's not something we've historically focused on. But I can tell you that if you get into those discussions with them and make sure they know why, what is your why for wanting this? If their why lines up, you have a much better chance getting it.
Yeah, I agree. And that why, and then I think one thing you just said there is to show them. As a recruiter, we get lots of people who will apply for entry-level HR positions without an HR qualification or without anything HR related. And what we would really look for is, how are you showing me that you want to be in HR? Have you been to HR Society networking events? Have you been to some of the training courses like the Human Resources 101, things like this?
Exactly.
And pension training courses, just that understanding. Who have you met with? Because I think that's what people want to see, sort of, and where if you are working now, like Ray said, ask for projects. Are there any projects?
Yes, step up.
Projects that you can be involved in. I know within our organization, we're just reviewing our performance and professional development, and I'm not doing it. I've asked all the people who have interest in HR to work on a project and present to me. Like, put yourself forward for those kind of things, because they will be the things that matter when you apply for an entry-level position, for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll even go one further and say everybody generally has a LinkedIn profile. And recruiters and people who are interested in you go check out your social media. They go look at you on Facebook. They go look at you on LinkedIn. So one thing you can do is take courses on LinkedIn that show up in your profile. Take examinations, and if you have a track record of taking things related to HR domain, and obviously have a bona fide interest in being in HR, that will be readily evident.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question.
Sure.
When is the HR conference? I think, did you say May 20th?
Yep. So we just sent out a save the date recently, and that was for May 20th. I can't say officially yet because I haven't gotten a signed contract back. We did get our main sponsor. Yay! It happens to be the same sponsor we've had previously. Thank you. We're very, very happy with them. The moment that I get that signed contract, I will be having a blast go out to tell everybody about it. It is this year. It will be May 20th at the Kempton Sea Fire. It's going to be an all-day event from about 7:30, 8 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. We've got some exciting stuff that I think we're pulling together. We are going to have local speakers. I haven't determined, and full disclosure, I'm not the person driving it. My amazing vice president, Miss Valentine Ball, who is in HR fairly recently, joined HR within the last couple of years, and was in our first cohort for the SHRM-CP SCP training here. She is the driver behind the conference, and she's doing an amazing job at getting us in the right direction. So, but to roll all that back, it's going to be a great conference. It will be on May 20th. So save the date and keep an eye out for the CISHRP Facebook and LinkedIn site. We will be putting out a lot of information on that very soon. That's not a promise. It's a guarantee. Something that I told you I was passionate about communication, and something that I think we have as a society not done really well in the past was have a continuous flow of touch points and communication. So I have made it a mission to ensure that we communicate early, we communicate often. So as soon as data comes out or information gets decided, we're sending out blasts in MailChimp. We're putting it out on our site. And we're trying to keep up with all of our social media posts much more regularly. I hope you've noticed that if you're a member. So that's it.
You have to be a member to go, Ray, to the.
I'm sorry?
You have to be a member to go to the.
No, you do not. You do not have to be a member to attend. We welcome any and all attendees. You do get a discount if you're a member. And the prices will be locked down and coming out very soon. So you'll be able to see if you want to balance the cost, because the discount for might eat up the majority of your membership costs, and then you get membership with other benefits and communications, etc.
And we've been talking a lot about courses, and somebody's asked, do you know which are the courses that are available on island to do on island?
So yes, we have the HR 101 course set. This current one is closed. I think we've got all the people in it that are going to be in it, and it actually starts Friday, I believe.
That's an HR Society one.
That's the CISHRP Society's HR 101 course set. It's 4 courses. It's really good grounding for local laws and requirements locally, not so much from a global HR standpoint. Then, of course, ICCI offers the SHRM-CP SCP preparation course. And I believe that UCCI, and I can't speak to this 100%, I believe UCCI offers something with a tie-in to HRCI, the more UK-based HR certification body. As I haven't been actively working with them, I'm not 100% on that. And I know that UCCI has a master's program for HR, and I think ICCI has a program for HR, but again, haven't been directly involved as much with those, other than blasting out messages for them or on their behalf for people to see.
That would probably be a really great thing to have in an information on the HR Society website.
And we're working, so our new administrator, which is Cayman HR, have been doing a great job. And they have as much passion as we do about modernizing us and getting us into a place where we have a workable portal that is much easier to navigate, has great information, and has a members section where you can go and have back and forth conversations and talk about things. We have frequently asked questions. We have sections on law. We're working on that route. Obviously, we all have our other draws on our time, but we are trying to push in that route. That is definitely on the table.
Sounds great. Another question has come through. Do employers take into account the HR Society courses? So I would imagine that means the HR 101 if you don't have an HR background or HR experience.
I can't say they do. I can say that, just as I said earlier, anything that shows a bona fide interest, which passing the course for the local HR would definitely show that you have put in the time, understand the information. And as the former training and development director, I will tell you the pass rate on the tests, not amazing. And I kept having, when people came in with a score of 68 and the passing was 70, I always got the question, well, can you pass me at 68? And my answer is no. If it was my choice, the bar would be 80. I want to raise, that is the purpose of the CISHRP, is to raise the bar of our profession. I don't lower bars. I raise it. I want to help you become capable of getting over that bar. And you can. It just takes diligence and focus and effort. But it is definitely a difficult course. And I don't know if that's so much because people just don't spend enough time studying, or if it's they're not as, I don't know. But I do know the pass rate floats between 30 and 50%. And
So don't sign up unless you're serious.
yes, and don't get me wrong, we'll give you a certificate of attendance, but it won't be the certificate that you passed it. So anyone who attends the courses would have a certificate that says, yes, I attended, and perhaps that would do a service to you. Full disclosure, that is a board decision, not a Ray decision. I say you have to pass. But the board unanimously against me agreed that no, we should at least let them know that they attended. And I said, okay, we'll do that. So you would get a certificate of attendance if you pass the course. Honestly, I think that more organizations need to realize that shows that you really do know your stuff for the local market.
Yeah, I agree. That's quite interesting to hear that. And I think possibly, again, the society getting that information out to employers will be really, really useful, because, even having sat on the board for years, I didn't realize that. And the one thing I would answer to that question, as somebody who's worked in recruitment for a long time, and a long time in Cayman as well, is that the HR Society courses, whilst Ray's right, they're not necessarily going to give you that professional designation to get that next level job. If I had somebody who had that professional designation but hadn't worked in HR, I would prefer that they'd been to the HR Society courses to understand how the laws are in context to Cayman. Sort of, we have such specific things that happen here in Cayman, especially with our immigration and pension laws and things like that, that I think they are really important. And whilst you probably want to do it in connection with something else, that they add a lot of value. So I would really recommend them. I know certainly the staff in my company all do them if they have an interest in HR, before we decide if they want to do the PHR or the SHRM, to see if that's something that they've got. That
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And I've said, I feel like I say a lot of things repeatedly, but I think they bear repeating. You are your own career coach, career champion, right? It's not up to your boss to get you where you need to be. You own it. So if you feel that HR is your path and you truly want it, find a way to get there, drive it. But you need to do that discovery to make sure it is your path. That's where you want to be. There's nothing worse than having an HR person who hates their job, because they have HR. I think that people have failed to realize how much of an effect HR has on the whole organization. If you have really engaged, happy, love their job HR people, that ripple effect is felt, because they will brighten up everything. They will keep people on. They will think about ways to keep people engaged. And if you have one that feels like they are in the worst job of their life because they are not aligned, they're good at it, but they really hate it, it has the same ripple effect in a negative way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. We have another question. Which HR books would you recommend to read that ideally they can get on island?
I am a voracious reader for pleasure. I don't read HR books. So, and honestly, what I would say is HR books makes me go, is there an HR book? HR has so many domains. that it's, I don't know that you can say there's a great HR book. I will say one of the most impactful books that I've laid my hands on was a book by Gallup called It's the Manager. And through their research and their analysis and a lot of it, and this book does a great job exploring the different aspects, is it talks about the fact that the manager is the most impactful person to engagement in your organization. It's not the senior leader. It's he only or she only affects the people right below her to the greatest extent. If you look at any high performing team, 98% chance the manager is an amazing leader. If you look at a low performing team, high percent chance the manager is not a great leader. And their data shows that when you take a team that's been high performing and a new manager steps in who's not, that team's performance goes downhill rapidly. When you take an underperforming team and you put a great leader in there, it skyrockets. When I was at Samsung, that was actually, interestingly, one of the things that happened to me is they kept giving me the people who had difficulties working with other people. They gave me the problem children because I had a track record of turning people around and making them rock star performers, even if they were super difficult employees. So it really does. If I was going to recommend a book, which you asked me to, I would say read It's the Manager. I think that will open a lot of eyes and insight for you. Otherwise, we live in such an amazing age. If you don't wake up every day and go, it is an amazing time to be alive. If you're not just thrilled that when you flip the switch on the wall, a light comes on, then you are taking things for granted. We live in such an amazing time. And every one of you is currently looking at a device which would be classified as a supercomputer 20 years ago. You have access to more information online, more communities, more discussion forums, more information that you can pull online about employee engagement, leadership, onboarding, offboarding. Every aspect of HR, I guarantee you, there is a wealth of information readily available at your fingertips. And I'll even go one further, and that is adults. Where we are, everybody on this call is an adult, and adult learners, by and large, have better learning through interaction. Which means if you're doing courses or if you are going into discussion forums and actually having a back and forth discussion, you are more likely to learn and retain the information than if you just read. That's not saying everybody, right? There are those unique people who they sit in a course, they walk out, they learn nothing, but they pull up a book and they learn and it's 100% retained. Everybody is unique. But again, data analytics would show us that bell curve. The majority of adult learners learn through direct interaction and practice. Yeah. So that's why I say I read a lot. I have probably 60 books on my phone. I read constantly, but I read for pleasure. So,
and it's so true, Ray. You know, there's the double side to that the interaction when you're looking for a job, whether it's in HR or anything. You can read and be an expert in anything, but if you're not interacting with the right people and showing them in the right way, then you'll find your journey is a lot longer than somebody who goes to networking events, goes to society events,
goes to a conference,
goes to an HR conference. Shameless plug.
There is no the old saying.
I will plug away. I know how hard it is to put that conference together.
There is no shame in my game. I'm good with
it. We have one more question, and probably room for a couple more. I'm just really conscious of time. You mentioned, and you mentioned a few there, but there's a lot that happens in HR. And we mentioned right at the beginning that it's evolving, that there are becoming sort of specialist roadmaps within the career. Can
Yes.
you give everybody an idea of like some of the different areas that you could work in once you're sort of qualified and understanding it, apart from
Sure. Sure. So my domain is HR strategy, right? I am at a much higher level of focus. So organizational design is a key aspect, understanding whether or not your organization has the proper structure to accomplish the goals. Do you have the right number of people with the right qualifications to support any given aspect? Are you ensuring you don't have one person reporting to one person, reporting to one person, one over one over one, which is a really bad practice? Are you properly aligning your resources? There's aspects of employee engagement, and that's a big field. And it overlaps. If you think of a Venn diagram, it overlaps heavily with HR analytics, because how do you know if your employees are engaged? You need to look. Some of that comes from analyzing whether or not, you can do surveys, and then you have to question, do they answer truthfully on the survey? There's a little bit, but you got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. There's also the data analytics side, which says, where do we have the highest amount of sick days? Where are we seeing the most people take vacation constantly or on certain ways? Where do we see performance issues with productivity as compared to where we're seeing it great? So you've got the engagement side, and you've got, I mentioned it earlier, it's absolutely critical to get right is recruitment. If you do recruiting well, then handling disputes and issues, those don't happen, because you get the people that love what they're doing and want to be there and fit. If you don't do recruiting well, the rest of your HR activities require a lot more work, because then you've got performance improvement that you've got to monitor. Which that's a huge one for me as well. And I'm not going to, let me pull the pin and throw the grenade. Performance improvement is a major focus for HR, right? Performance management. And I would say that probably 95%, and this is a guess, it could be as low as 90 or as high as 99, of organizations on this island are using performance management methodologies that are completely useless. They are an immense waste of time and money. They throw money for very little, if any, improvement to actual performance. And in fact, most of them are tailor-made, and the government system is right in line with this, are tailor-made to degrade performance. And they realize it, they know it, it's a known fact. The most productive, effective organizations have gotten away from classic performance management and are using much better systems. But that was an HR drive, right? That's a domain where somebody went, why are we still using this outdated, outmoded, completely ineffective system? They did studies, they did analytics, they proved it. So on top of performance management, recruiting and onboarding. Your recruiters don't necessarily are not your onboarders, but one of the things that organizations who are amazing do, you feel like you're part of the company before you even get there. They've got the right method down to communicate to you, to make sure you know everything you need to know before you step through the door, to welcome you, to take you around and get you into the meat of the organization and the feel, to understand what it takes to engage you from day zero, right? And drive you forward. That in and of itself is a domain of expertise that not everybody even remotely has mastered. Offboarding, almost as important. Have you properly helped people understand all the aspects it is to get out of the organization and to move on and where they're going? This can be even more critical for terminations. And let's be clear, terminations happen, right? We do terminate employees. It's a difficult thing. And we have to be able to be emotionally available and emotionally disconnected at the same time. Mm-hmm. Because you have to be professional, but you're also compassionate. And it is not an easy thing to balance. Yeah. Not everybody can do it, and not everybody should. And that's, If you're not in an office of one, usually your team is what will help you. And I've said this one again, broken record time number 3. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Look at every basketball team out there. And I'm not a sports guy, so be impressed. I'm using basketball. Every basketball team out there, it's not one person. There's usually somebody who's awesome, and but their team is what keeps them and allows them to be. It's the team that makes it work. I have never found anything where there was one person who did everything perfectly and was amazing at everything, right? Other than my wife. It's just a matter of, you've got your area that you can be the absolute rock star in, and where you're not, get a rock star in that area. Make that team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think all I could add to that is, from a recruiter's point of view, some of the job titles that we see in this area, organizational reviews and restructuring positions, benefits and compensation, HR specialists,
job evaluations.
Yeah. A big one that we see a lot now is in the D&I space. We're seeing more and more of the big firms actually having HR particular positions for the diversity and inclusion policies. Leadership
development is actually one that it's my domain of joy and happiness. It also happens to be something I've noticed, that there are, not in Cayman, but in the US, there are lots and lots of positions for leadership development, managers, directors, coaches. So a lot of organizations are starting to embrace the understanding that the leadership is a key, and coaching internally is essential to success. But I apologize. You're correct. That's why I said there are over 29 different domains within HR. It's a huge, which is why I say ambivert, extrovert, HR is probably going to be something for you. Even introverts can find something that they would love to deal in HR.
Yeah, I think for what I see working in Cayman, we have relatively low barriers to entry for this career choice, which is amazing, because we have a lot of careers here where you just can't do them without certain qualifications. Yep. And HR lends itself so well to so many different personality types, education background, your grades, all those things. I think it's a great career for matching to something you are good at. What I will say is, all of those things we've talked about generally come later on in your career, and most people, because there's low barriers to entry, will start as a generalist.
Yes.
You will, and I promise you, because I've done it, Ray's done it, you will find your path, but you do have to bear in mind that you will very likely, there's the odd thing, but you will very, very likely either come into HR from the sides of compliance or accounting or law, if you've been in employment law. But if you're coming in straight to HR, you will generally come in as a generalist and at the lower levels and work your way up. And like me, decide you have to talk all day, so I need to be recruiting and onboarding. Or if you're more in analytics, you'll move that way. So I think that's something that I would add to that as well.
And to speak to it, the HR generalist, I do not put it down. It's a great role, because just like we were talking about with the associates earlier, it lets you put your toe into every aspect of HR, and to truly start to understand at the ground level what HR has. Not only that, but it gives you insight. It gives you a perfect opportunity to go, ooh, I like this, I don't like that. And to start to really understand the path that you want to then go. But the thing people fail to do, and I highly encourage this, when you know your path, communicate that to your leaders. Let them know what your goal path is, because they can't help you achieve it if they don't know what it is. And they're not mind readers, I guarantee it. Right? You've got to have communication, and you're your own champion. Be the person that brings that to their attention. Don't wait for them to ask. Don't wait for them to say, well, what is it that you want to do? Tell them, you know, I've done all these things. I'm good to do this, but where I think I could really shine and where I could do the best for this organization is here. What can we do to make that happen? And work with them to see how to get down that path.
Wonderful, love it. I think I was just thinking there, somebody asked a question at the beginning about how they break into HR. And one of the things that I would really recommend, which I see a lot of out in industry at the moment, are looking at the apprenticeships and the training programs that are offered. I know certainly Connect offers one via Nova and CML, which is a 24-month program where you do finish, you rotate within the HR consulting teams, the immigration teams, the recruitment and onboarding teams, and you become professionally designated at the end. So I would really recommend thinking about doing something like that. Sometimes people get scared off by apprenticeship, but all apprenticeship means is you're training while you're being paid for it.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. So I'd really recommend that as well. But one last quick question, Ray, and we'll have to finish, but can I become a member of the HR Society if I'm a student?
Absolutely. We have a student membership option. If you go to the CISHRP's website, there'll be an application form that you can pull up. It's actually our lowest cost option, obviously because you're a student, and we still want you in if you're there. So you can definitely, if you're a student, you can definitely apply for that and join the membership. What you can't do is you can't run for office. I don't think student members are allowed to vote, but you still get the discounts on the conference. You get invited to any of the events that we do, the trainings, the webinars that we arrange. All of that would certainly be available for you, and we'd love to have you. And it will get you involved with the society, where you have an opportunity, hopefully, to then branch out and talk to people and really start to discover where your passions lie. That's a great question. I appreciate it. And just to plug back, Connect is doing amazing stuff. I am so impressed with the activities that Connect and Nova, and not as much CML, but Nova and Connect, since you branched off of those, have been doing such awesome stuff for the community and for young Caymanians in the domains of HR and getting in. I'm singing your praises happily and fully. Keep up the great and amazing work.
We will.
To the ever silent Hannah Jackson, who's out there, you're a rock star.
She's always here.
She's amazing.
Yeah, and since I took over as managing partner, of course, CML, Nova, Connect, we're all one, heading for the same strategy of, and so it's really important.
Awesome.
One of our things that we're heading for. Last words of wisdom, Ray. I know you'll have some.
Let me see. What am I known for saying? Hope is not an effective strategy. Would be the number one. Don't reinvent the wheel, re-engineer it, which is to say there's lots of information out there. As I said, it's at your fingertips. Go find it, find that path for you. Go look at Marcus Buckingham's Loved It or Loathed It. I guarantee it will resonate with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go look at that.
And if you don't know your path, or even if you think you do, if you're not honestly smiling when you leave work most days, go watch that video. Mm-hmm. It might be an epiphany. It might. To thine own self be true. You are your own champion. You are the one that will drive your career forward. Find what you love, find what you want to do. It doesn't mean you have to love it 100% of the time. But if you're not loving part at least 25% of the time, try to find what it is, right? Try to find that thing that will get you there. I hope it's HR, right? I think the HR field is great, but if it's accounting, go be the best accountant you can. Yeah. If I've met one and only one person who was truly an accountant. He loved numbers more than anybody I've ever met. He absolutely loved it. And more power to him. He's an amazing accountant.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's signed on today. Time is precious, and we appreciate you giving us yours. If you have any questions, please let let us know, send them to Connect. We're happy to keep fielding those questions for you. If you are curious about HR, feel free to reach out to Connect as well. We can connect you with HR professionals, let you know how you become a member of the HR Society, all those things. That's what we do. But thank you very much. And thank you, Ray, for all your words of wisdom. And we're all going off to watch a YouTube video now.
Fantastic. I can't say anything more to that. So thanks for having me on.
Okay.
I'm so excited for the profession. Let's go.